Hi again. Welcome to your first lesson about the lithosphere. We're starting with the soil and permafrost. Alright, let's start with a question. How long does it take for 1 centimeter of soil to form? Make your guesses to your teacher. You guys can do this out loud. Might be a good time to pause the video before I give you the answer. So you can go ahead and pause that now while you all have a discussion. Alright, now that you're ready to start again, let's see what the answer is. How long does it take for 1 centimeter of soil to form? It takes 200 years. So, we're going to learn more about this process. Here are your essential questions, the kind of things we're going to be asking ourselves during this lesson. What conditions must be met for soil to support life? What is permafrost, and how have people adapted to life in permafrost-covered areas? Here are your lesson objectives. This is what you need to be able to do by the end of the lesson. I can explain what soil needs to support life. I can define permafrost. There's a definition, and I can give it. I can describe the effects of melting permafrost on the rest of the planet. I know what happens when the permafrost melts. Alright, starting with the soil. Soil comes from parent rock. If you look at the picture here, this bottom layer that I'm pointing to, also known as bedrock, is parent rock. It makes up the solid part of the Earth's crust. Remember again that you're copying in your blanks these bold and underlined words. So, frost, wind, and rain wear down the rock on the surface of the lithosphere. This creates large rock fragments that mix with organic matter and that eventually turns to soil. So we can see them here, your parent rock, and then it gets broken down by frost, wind, and rain. And here you have these big chunks of weathered rock fragments. So the parts that break off, they're floating around in the rest of the soil. Eventually those get broken down into even smaller parts. So this is partially why it takes so long for soil to form. Next. Soil horizons. As soil develops, it thickens and forms distinct layers. Each layer is called a horizon. We can see it here. Each of these layers are different colors, it looks like. We can tell them apart. So horizons can be distinguished or told apart by their color, their texture, and composition. So these different layers are made of different things. Alright. Soil absorbs, filters, and stores water. And it contains all kinds of living matter, different matter, as well as air, small living organisms, and microorganisms that decompose organic matter, creating nutrients for plant life. So what that means is there's little tiny organisms, little tiny living things in the soil that are going to break down this plant. So they'll see the leaves on the top, these leaves get broken down, and those nutrients get sent into the soil. Same if it's a dead animal or these kinds of things. They get broken down and returned to the soil. So it's really important that this decomposition is happening for there to be nutrients. In general, the top layers of soil are darker. They contain a high concentration of organic matter. So see these 2 or 3 top layers, they're much darker because they have much more of this broken down plant and animal material, organic matter in them. Plants put their roots down in topsoil. Plants put their roots down here because there's a lot of nutrients there. And deeper underground, the particles of the soil become coarser, so bigger, and paler, meaning they have less nutrients. Alright, we'll keep going. 3 conditions. You need 3 things for soil to support plant life. The first thing, you need a sufficient amount of minerals, water-soluble nutrients. These are things that can be dissolved in water. So you need enough minerals. You need adequate moisture. You need enough water. The desert is not covered in grass, and there's a reason for this. Not enough water. Third thing, you need an appropriate soil pH. That means you need the right pH. You've heard of pH before in secondary 3. So, soil that is too acidic, so too much acid, or too alkaline, too basic, affects the transfer of minerals to the roots. So, up north, because of all of the coniferous trees, so trees with needles, those needles, when they hit the ground, are actually organic matter, but when they get broken down, they're very acidic. So it makes it hard for a lot of different plants to grow up north. That's why if you've ever tried to grow a vegetable garden up here, you had to buy soil and add different soil from what's just in the ground. That's because the soil is too acidic. It does not have an appropriate soil pH. So your 3 things again are enough minerals, enough water, and the right pH. Good. All right. You can discuss this with the people around you and get ready to share it with your class. So I'm asking you, what are layers of soil called? All right, back to it. So you should know what those 3 layers are called. And you should know how you tell between them. And you should know what 3 things you need for soil to support life. So, layers of soil, they're called horizons. You can tell them apart by their color, texture, and what they're made out of. And the 3 things you need for soil are 1, enough minerals, 2, enough water, and 3, the right pH. Let's keep going. Permafrost. In northern regions, large expanses of soil are permanently frozen. This means that the ground is frozen, doesn't thaw. So permafrost, this is your definition. Permafrost is ground whose temperature has been 0 degrees Celsius or lower for at least 2 years. You can see a map of Canada here. You can see the areas where we have continuous permafrost, discontinuous, so it's not solid permafrost through these areas, but some of them are. And then we have sporadic. We would count as sporadic. There might be some permafrost where we are, but generally we can dig down. So remember your definition, 0 degrees or lower for at least 2 years. That's permafrost. Almost 50% of Canada is covered in permafrost. In some places, it's up to 500 meters deep. It's a lot of frozen ground. Permafrost can also be found at high altitudes, so way up high, like mountain peaks. In some regions, the upper layers of permafrost thaw in the summer, and certain plants and other organisms have a short growing season. So the first few layers of the permafrost are going to thaw out and unfreeze. Permafrost makes agriculture impossible, so you're not farming where there's permafrost, and it also makes construction a challenge. You can see this house in the picture. It is fallen over. They've even got a little support here trying to keep it from collapsing onto the smaller part. I believe this is in the Northwest Territories. So when that ground thawed, it allowed everything around it to shift around. So their construction has to take this into account, and even when they try to, you still end up with buildings that fall down. So even if permafrost is frozen hard as rock, it is extremely sensitive to external influences. This means that it is extremely sensitive to temperature. So temperature rises can compromise the stability of all the buildings on it. So if the temperature goes up, it makes it really hard for that building to stay standing straight. We're going to see what else happens when the temperature goes up too. So, what is permafrost made of? Discuss these and get ready to share it. Why do you think permafrost is sometimes referred to as a ticking time bomb? Why would you call permafrost a ticking time bomb? And it has to do with temperatures rising. I'll give you that much. You might want to pause the video while you all discuss your thoughts. All right, hopefully you're ready for the answers. Let's see what we've got here. So, what is permafrost made of? I asked you to think about soil horizons. Please write this down in your notes. I know it's long, but it'll help you remember. Permafrost is made of the upper layers of soil horizons, so organic matter, topsoil, and subsoil. Those three layers, permafrost. I'll give you a few seconds to write that down. All right. Your next question. Why do you think permafrost is sometimes referred to as a ticking time bomb? Why is it a ticking time bomb? Here you go. It's frozen most of the time. This means that there's a lot of organic matter. So all those dead plants and animals get stored there, but because it's frozen, the microorganisms in the soil do not get to break it down. It's called a ticking time bomb because when the temperature of the Earth, we've all heard about climate change, rises due to CO2 gas in our atmosphere, the permafrost is going to melt. When that melts, it means that all this stored organic matter is finally going to get broken down. And that's going to release a ton of CO2, and that's going to speed up the warming of the Earth even more. This is long. You might want to pause the video because for the sake of the length, I'm going to keep going. So you might want to pause the video so that you have enough time to copy all of this. These are my favorite things to ask on quiz questions. So make sure you get it down. Pause it if you need more time because I'm about to keep going. Here are your last things. Can you identify the conditions required to support life? Can you define permafrost? Can you describe the effects of the permafrost melting? Can you do these three things? Make sure you do your workbook questions at the end of this lesson, and I will be with you next time.